Hello, Stephan here with Liquidity with a video about time expressions that include the little German words seit, vor, and lang.
Liquidity.
Of these three time expressions, seit, vor, and lang, especially seit and vor can be a little bit confusing, not only for English speakers who learn German, but also for German speakers who learn English, because there are some false friends in certain circumstances, so it really depends on the context. Let's start with the German time expression seit, which right off the bat seems to be best translated with since, and sometimes it can be translated that way, but not always. So let me give you two examples to show you the difference. I'm going to give you two versions of essentially the same sentence. I'm just moving a couple of words around a little bit just to show you two very common German sentence structures. So we could say, seit 3 Jahren spielen wir Tennis, or you could also write, wir spielen seit 3 Jahren Tennis. So if you literally wanted to translate that, you would be tempted to say, since 3 years, right? And you could actually translate that into English as since 3 years ago, but that just is not very good stylistically. So in English, we would translate that with, for the last 3 years, we have been playing tennis. And in English, we're using the present perfect, whereas in German, we're using the present tense. The present tense is a little bit more flexible, a little bit more adaptable in German. In this case, in English, I want to use the present perfect simply because this is something that has been going on in the past up until now. Sort of is still going on, but mostly in the past. So that first example, seit 3 Jahren, expresses a time frame. So let's shift over to another construction where we use a point of time with the word seit. Seit 2020 spielen wir Tennis. Or another construction could be, wir spielen seit 2020 Tennis. So in this case, actually, we would translate it almost identically, word for word, right? So we could also say in English, since 2020 or since 2020, we have been playing tennis. We just use a different tense, the present perfect in English, to express that this is something that has been going on in the past, not too distant past, and is basically still going on today. So let's use the little German word vor, which more or less translates as before in English, but not always, depending on the circumstances, depending on the context, right? So first example would be here. Vor 3 Jahren spielten wir Tennis. Or if we move the time phrase in a different position, we could say, wir spielten vor 3 Jahren Tennis. So at first it seems like a time frame, but really it is what happened before the time frame started. So more like a point in time measured by how many years ago. Literally, I could translate that with 3 years before now, but stylistically that doesn't sound very good. So in English we would say, 3 years ago we played tennis, or we played tennis 3 years ago. Let's use the word for with a specific point in time. Let's just use the year 2020 because that's what we did with the first example. So we could say, vor 2020 spielten wir Tennis. Or wir spielten vor 2020 Tennis. We played tennis before 2020 or 2020, or before 2020, we played tennis. So in this case, in both German and in English, I have a straightforward past tense because this is something that happened in the past. Let's look at an example with the little word lang, which most of the time translates into long. So I could actually say lange Zeit or vor langer Zeit, long time ago, something like that. But let's look at a very simple example here. 3 Jahre lang spielten wir Tennis. Or you could also say, wir spielten 3 Jahre lang Tennis. It's very tempting to translate that with 3 years long, which is not something anybody in English would say. So a better translation for that would be, for 3 years we played tennis, or we played tennis for 3 years. So lang in this context would be translated with the word for, which sounds just like the German word with the V on it, right? The for. It doesn't always translate from one to the other. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please give it a like. Check out my other videos. See if there's something that you like there among my other videos. And consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't done so yet. Thanks for watching. Danke fürs Zuschauen.